On this edition of ITG, the football team is back from spring break and back to work, and the coaching staff has a new addition as well. We'll get into all of that and more on this edition of In the Gun.
You are now watching Believe.
ITG.
With Wes, Owen, and Jed.
I've got the best teammates in the business.
No way!
They both played the game. They both know the game. Owen is the runaway beer truck, known for having some fun.
Owen Schmidt, you have a podcast In the Gun.
Owen Schmidt, like a runaway beer truck down the sidelines.
Jed is the signal caller, who is the X's and O's and the brainiac.
Statistically, always punting on fourth down makes no sense.
So we've combined those two skill sets.
Skills I've acquired over a very long career.
You are In the Gun.
Once you enter this family, there's no getting out.
In the Gun, episode 236 of your new favorite WVU football podcast. I'm Wes Schuler, and as always, I've got the best teammates in the business. We've got the signal caller, Jed Drenning. We think, no guarantees, no promises, but we think we're going to be joined by the beer truck, Big Owen Schmidt, here in just a few minutes. But as always, we are brought to you in part by our friends at Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for betting on all the madness. Bet Online, the game starts here. And as the madness rolls along, Jed, I don't want to say that we're over our historic snubbing from the NCAA March Madness, the men's tournament. Big shout out to the women's team, won their first round game, went toe-to-toe with the Tar Heels, played really well, ended up falling short by 9 points in their bid to reach the Sweet 16, but a very strong overall season, undefeated at home, 16-0, ranked throughout the majority of the season, won a tournament game, making it to the round of 32 there. So a big shout out to JJ Quinterly, to Coach Kellogg, to everybody involved there with the women's team. But Jed, we're staring down the Sweet 16 for the men here as well too, starting in a couple days. And hey, by the time this episode drops on Wednesday, could have a new WVU basketball head coach. I would certainly think by the end of the week here, in the next 3, 4, 5 days, we will know who I believe it'll be the 24th head coach of the men's basketball program.
I think this is turning into the burner age, or the golden age for burner accounts, right? It's like every time you turn around, some burner accounts try to cash in by making the announcement of our next men's basketball coach. A buddy of mine even called me today. He's like, as we're on the phone, he was looking at something. He said, wait a minute, Pete Thamel's reporting. He said, wait a minute, I got to search. Is that actually Pete Thamel? It looks like his account. It looks just like it. And so he looks it up and he finds his actual account. He said, nah, that's not Pete Thamel. So it's like all these fake announcements coming out. Wes, all I can do at this point is hope that the announcement, Ren's not going to make the announcement on Tuesday. That's the only guarantee I can make. Yeah. This could drop on Wednesday. Tuesday is, guess what? Ren's not going to make the announcement on April Fool's Day. That's all I can guarantee.
There we go.
At least I think I can guarantee that. So it does feel imminent, but it's felt imminent for a handful of days now. There has been a lot of activity in this coaching carousel this cycle. There really has. It maybe it's just me. Maybe it's because we're paying as much attention now as we did a year ago. It didn't feel as active last year, right? I mean, I don't remember as many names coming and going last year during this brief process, but maybe they did.
I do think a bit, not quite as active as last year, but I also think part of the reason it felt like that was because we had much more time to prepare last year. I mean, you knew throughout the entire course of the season, you were basically doing a coaching search, right? It wasn't like this one where, bang, you don't make the tournament, bang, your head coach is gone. Not even to Iowa, which you thought was maybe a possibility, but to Indiana. So I think you're right. I think it is a little more active this year. And then I just think the backdrop of this all happening much quicker, the timeline being shrunk big time, plays into it as well, too. I mean, the portal for college basketball opened on Monday, March 24th, ahead of Sweet 16, with a whole lot still going on here. I mean, there's still 16 teams playing. Well, actually more than that, because if I'm counting the NIT and some of these other tournaments as well, too. So a few dozen Division I programs still playing, a handful of teams still looking for coaches, and yet the portal is open as we speak now, Jed, and when this drops on Wednesday. So, yeah, sense of urgency this time around, certainly, that you didn't quite feel last time when you had much more time to prepare. Some of the names that we've talked about that have been thrown around, Ben McCollum was a name that was kicked around from Drake, and wouldn't have that kind of been funny if we would have gone and gotten a Drake head coach in back-to-back seasons? But Ben
We'd
McCollum
be
ends
there,
up
Michigan.
going. Ben McCollum ends up going to Iowa, where he's from as well too. I think we were talking about this with Terry Bowden last week. The amount of successful football coaches from West Virginia, and particularly North Central West Virginia, a lot of good hoops coaches out of Iowa. All of a sudden, Ben McCollum goes to Iowa. Nico Medved, he was another one who had been talked about around this job as well too. He was with Colorado State, won a game with them in the tournament, like Ben McCollum did with Drake. He's off to Minnesota, his home state and his home area as well too. Is kind of that Big Ten money starts to round up some big name coaches. I think Jared Calhoun was mentioned around the WVU job. He's got ties to the university. He's got ties to Bob Huggins, but he signed a contract extension with Utah State. So Jed, right now it seems like if you're kind of looking at the dancing partners, it really feels like there's two options left for Ren Baker. There's more options than that, but I'm talking if you're really trying to narrow it down to the top candidates right now. Ross Hoge, who's the head coach of North Texas Mean Green, where, of course, Ren Baker has a connection. He was the former athletic director there, while Ross was an assistant coach for North Texas. They play in the NIT quarterfinals tonight against Oklahoma State. And then Richard Pitino, no, not Rick Pitino, his son Richard, who is the head coach of New Mexico. New Mexico State just took them to the tournament as well, the New Mexico Lobos. So it feels like it's going to be Hoge or it's going to be Pitino at this point. Pitino's also talking to Villanova. So, Jed, as always, there's a lot of moving and shaking, and by the time this drops, we could have an answer. But here we go, coaching carousel on the hamster wheel. The only thing I keep coming back to, as much as I've kind of been up and down in this, I was really excited about the idea of Ben McCollum. He ends up staying in his home state of Iowa and going to Iowa from Drake. I trust Ren Baker in this. I mean, the dude is a basketball savant. If you look at his record of hiring basketball coaches, men's and women's, at North Texas and at WVU, it's outstanding. And so as much as I'm kind of like, a little anxiety setting in about this whole coaching search, I'll admit, I know some people are starting to panic. I still trust Ren Baker that he's going to nail this hire. Even if it might not have been his first candidate, I still think that he is going to hire somebody who is a dynamite fit here. And like I said, it feels like we're getting closer to the conclusion of this thing.
And I guess I would include the possibility. I wouldn't call it a looming possibility, but it's probably on the table at this juncture, with this thing stretching out to the degree that it has. The internal hire, right? Yep. I mean, from a continuity standpoint,
Chester Frazier,
you can't necessarily rule that out. And for that matter, there's always the possibility, as you said, Ren knows the game. I promise you, Ren has had. Trust me when I say this. He has had an incredibly deep and thorough list vetted, not just before he hired DeVries, but probably even before he got here, to be honest with you. And the truth of the matter is, there's always the possibility that somebody just completely comes out of left field, that's left field to us, but not left field to Ren. Maybe he's looking at this differently.
Yep.
I mean, he sees the game in such a way that, there are certain things that he wants out of his coach, from even when you get down to the statistical side of things and all that, a certain style he wants. He understands basketball, as you said. And what can I offer to this conversation? To be honest with you, my favorite thing about hiring Coach DeVries last year was I kept going back to the fact the guy's only had 2 jobs in 25 years. You got to love that.
I know.
Well, what'd that get us? 10 months? So what's that worth? So who knows? But you have to think there's at least a middling possibility that by the time this episode drops, maybe we have a new coach, and you're listening to this with more knowledge about it than Wes and I have right now. But obviously, stay tuned. It's been interesting, but there's been a lot of action, a lot of movement this cycle, no doubt about it.
with all due respect to the good people of North Texas and the Mean Green faithful, it would certainly help if they lose this NIT game that they're about to tip off here as you and I record to Oklahoma State. So maybe we can get that process moving a little bit faster if Ross Hoge is going to be the guy for Ren Baker and the Mountaineers.
Danger of being we're in danger of becoming North Texas as Michigan to West Virginia,
That's
right?
exactly right. And someone
I mean, we're
someone
going
was
to take Ren, maybe their basketball coach.
Jed, somebody was
You know,
pointing out too. So North Texas's head coach 2 years ago, he's now the head coach at Texas Tech. His name's escaping me right now, but he was the guy who Hoge worked under before he was promoted 2 years
okay.
ago when he went to Texas Tech. He was promoted, or he took the job. The last head coach at North Texas took the job after they lost to Oklahoma State in the NIT 2 years ago. So how funny would it be
Wow.
if 2 years later their coach leaves for another Big 12 team after losing to a Big 12
Wow.
team in the NIT? Time really is a flat circle. So maybe since we don't get the Drake stealing their coach
Yeah.
52 weeks apart, we'll get
Yeah.
the North Texas flat circle there as well. Another thanks to our friends at Toothman Ford and JR, everybody there at Team Toothman. We all know cars cost less in
Last
Grafton.
thing, not to interrupt, Wes.
No, you're
The
good.
last thing I wanted to add, I sent this in the group thread today. I thought this was fascinating. Credit goes out to at NCAA Buzzer Beaters, BTERS, on Twitter, on X. But what he did was he or she put together the Sweet 16 and the starting five in the Sweet 16 with the logo of the school that each of the starting five
That's
for each
crazy.
team started their career at. And when you look at it, one team of the 16 has all five starters actually started their career at the school, and that's Purdue. Duke, four of their five starters, of course, one starter from Tulane. And then, do you see anything else? BYU has three. Michigan State has four of their
Michigan
five
State.
from
Yep.
Michigan State. But it's just so telling. It's not
It's crazy.
you want to perfectly encapsulate the modern state of college sports, major college sports, in one little graphic. This graphic does it. I mean, this graphic.
Jed, you ready
absolutely
for
does
this? You ready for this one too? Just before we move on here, to piggyback off of that real quick. St. Francis, St. Francis, little school here in Pennsylvania. They made the tournament. They were in that first play-in game where they lost on the heartbreaking buzzer beater in that very first play-in
Yep.
game. They just made the announcement today that they are moving down to D3 from D1. They made the tournament. They were playing a tournament game this time a week ago. They are moving to D3 because their head coach and their entire starting five are gone and in the portal and leaving.
Wow.
If
That
that's
is
not
crazy.
if that's not college sports in 2025 in a nutshell, this team was in the NCAA tournament a week ago, literally playing a game a week ago
Holy
right now as we
cow.
record. They lost, like they almost won and got into the actual, to play a game in the big dance and won a play-in game. Their whole starting five gone in the portal. Their head coach gone, took a different job. They announced today they're moving the basketball program from D1 to D3.
Imagine that. That's amazing. That's
Insane.
and
Insane.
I've heard both sides of the argument made. The side saying that, well, hey, now in the age of the portal and everything's driven by NIL money, that's why you have 16 power conference schools and that's it. No mid majors. But at the same time, people pointed out all the mid major wins in this tournament. The fact that a couple mid majors came within a basket or two, a score or two at the end of some tight games of making it in. Basically they're saying one season does not a sport make. Okay.
Sure.
And I don't know. It's going to get harder for the mid majors, though. It just is I mean, that graphic says it all. I'm looking at this graphic, and I also saw, I think the stat today was 15 All Americans, seven of them had transferred from lower schools to end up at a larger school on the
Well,
All
Jed, look,
American team. So,
every team that's in the Sweet 16, and again, there can be one-offs. This doesn't mean it's going to happen every year going forward, but every team in the Sweet 16 is in either the SEC, Big 10, ACC, Big 12, or Big East.
yeah.
That's it. Or pardon me, I don't even think the Big East got a team in. So
No, the Big East didn't enter.
Yeah, you're right. So it's
No.
SEC, Big 10, ACC, Big 12. The Power 4 conferences have all 16 teams.
UConn got knocked out. And by the way, nobody's going to convince me Hurley didn't want the world to hear what he said when he came
Good
off
Lord,
the
what
floor.
a jag.
What a here's how bad it is with the SEC fatigue. That's what it took. I found myself, I'm sitting there, I was at a birthday party with the Florida UConn game on, and me and my brother-in-law, I'm pulling for UConn. That's how tired I'm of the SEC. I'm actually pulling for Hurley. I'm like, congratulations,
See, I
Greg
don't mind
Sankey.
Dan.
This is what you've
Like,
done.
we know here on this show it's like Pat Narduzzi is public enemy number one, but then right after him, I think we've established might be Greg
Yeah.
Sankey over these last couple weeks, especially. Jed, I like Dan Hurley being the heel. But be the heel. Like when you get called out for being the heel, be the heel, man. Like who cares? That's who you are. Just own it. Don't try and run.
Yes.
Don't send your
Yes.
SID after the reporter who
Oh, that
shot the
was
video.
so weak.
Like just be. And I don't even want to say being the bad guy because like there's some coaches in college sports that have legitimately been the Chris Beards and the Rick Pitino's in the world that have legitimately been in hot
Those are
water
bad guys. Yeah.
for real criminal. Dan Hurley ain't that. But like, that's the wrestling heel. Like the wrestling heels don't strut out there and go, "Why is everybody being so mean to me?" No, they give the
Yeah.
crowd
He's just, he's
the double
the
middle
best way.
fingers and the crotch chop, and they keep it moving.
That's right. Maybe the best way to say it is he's really easy not to like. Okay, that doesn't mean he's a bad guy. He's just really easy not
Correct.
to like.
Correct. That's a great way to
Yeah.
put it. Jed, somebody that we are going to get to know and get to like is Logan Bradley. Of course, we had a vacancy on the offensive coaching staff after the departure of Blaine Stewart to the National Football League and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, Jed, what do we know about Logan Bradley, a former Auburn offensive analyst?
He was at Auburn, offensive analyst, as you said. He's being brought in to coach the inside receivers and has a history with Ryan Garrett. Of course, Ryan Garrett was brought from Jack State with Rich to coach the wideouts. Interesting story when you look at Logan Bradley, he's a Texas guy, and out of high school, he ended up enrolling at Ole Miss, starting his coaching career as a student assistant, and kind of made his way for a few years there. Ends up at Liberty. Uh, when he's at Liberty, he recruits Caden Salter, who's also a Texas guy. Then ends up at Auburn, and he was part of an Auburn staff that strung together a couple top 10 recruiting classes. So the big thing with him is, first of all, Ryan Garrett raves about the guy, and there is some history there, and but he's going to bring some recruiting chops. We said that to some extent when Coach Porter was hired to coach the running backs as well. There's nothing wrong with that. If you can populate your staff with not just one or two, but more than a handful of guys who
Yeah.
can really, really make an impact on the recruiting trail, that's going to serve you really well. So he's a young guy, he's a hungry guy. So I'm pretty excited about what he's going to bring to the table, starting with recruiting, but also it's going to be kind of fun to see what he does with those slots because he's going to have a room that has some toys in it. So
Yeah.
that's what's interesting too. Don't sleep on those slots. I mean, I do think we can potentially, from the combination of Rodney Gallagher, who Mountaineer fans are familiar with, they're not familiar with Bowie. He's a Martinsburg kid, but did some good things at Jack State, and now he's here. And then we got the transfer from Eastern Michigan. That I think all three of those guys can contribute
Mm-hmm.
and play. So that's the room that you're going to see a new coach taking over and seeing what he can do with it. In addition to trying to make an impact on the recruiting trail, so I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I am too. I echo everything you said there. I think that, listen, he obviously doesn't have the direct WVU ties and embedded in the history of the program like Blaine Stewart was. I mean, Blaine Stewart was very unique in that regard just because of his father and where he grew up and all those different things. But I think Logan Bradley checks a lot of the same boxes as Blaine Stewart. That's where I'm going with that. I think he has the upside on the recruiting trail. I think he has the youthful energy and relatability for these young guys, and he feels like another person who is a riser in this business. And those are the type of, you want to populate your coaching staff with the veteran coaches that have been around forever, the Castiles of the world. You want to populate your coaching staff with guys who are young and up and coming and hungry and maybe just think and see the game a little bit different of a way, like the Zach Alleys of the world. And so I like this addition of, stinks to lose Blaine, obviously. But I think Logan Bradley can check a lot of those same boxes for you.
Great irony is when Blaine was hired from the Steelers, when he was on staff with Coach Tomlin, the history with Coach Stewart, we all know it. But what was the indictment against Blaine? There was one box he didn't check. He'd never recruited. But Neil kept saying, who can sell West Virginia and the brand
Right,
equity
right.
of West Virginia University greater than Blaine Stewart? So even though that's the one thing he hadn't done, he coached from a technician standpoint. You knew he could bring great value there, but he settled so quickly into that recruiting seat and the recruiting side of the job that that's the part that you think might be missed the most. But enter Logan Bradley, and that's kind of the reputation that he's earned. So can he settle into some of those same situations and start harvesting and bringing in talent? And I think he can because look, Blaine was starting to make some inroads in southwestern Pennsylvania. It was happening,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And we saw that happening. Now it was teamwork, it was tag team through and through. But so anytime you get a young, energetic, full of piss and vinegar assistant coach that wants to make his way in the world and is eager to do so, starting on the recruiting trail, you're in a pretty good place. And I think that's what we got.
I completely agree. And as we move and shake throughout the spring here, that coaching staff maybe now settled. We'll see. All right. We don't want to jinx it. We don't want to put the cart ahead of the horse there. But yes, very excited to have Logan Bradley in the fold and learn more about him as we roll along here throughout this offseason and into, of course, the regular season. We have got to get to our break, but when we come back on the other side, the football team is back from spring break, and there's some significant pressure being applied, some competition here in the final couple weeks of spring ball. What does it all mean? Where does it all go from here? We'll get into all of that when we return on the other side. You are in the gun.
For nearly 20 years, Fortis has been the nation's leader in providing guaranteed roof performance programs for commercial buildings. Fortis offers roof performance solutions that feature extensive initial and ongoing reconditioning for commercial buildings as an alternative to traditional replacement, with long-term performance guarantees that are backed by global leader Lloyd's of London. Fortis offers a comprehensive range of roof performance management programs that provide financial security, extend the life of our customers' roofs, and make a significant impact on ROI. Fortis is currently improving performance and increasing ROI for customers at more than 4,800 locations, with more than 140 million square feet protected, including many Fortune 500 companies that have turned to Fortis to save money, gain financial certainty, and extend the life of their existing roofs. Fortis has helped customers save more than $520 million in capital roof replacement costs for an average ROI of over 250%. To learn more, visit fortis.us.com. Fortis, roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed.
Nobody supports the blue and gold Mountaineers like Toothman Ford. With over 20 NIL deals and counting, Toothman Ford continues to rally behind our student athletes. And it's time we rally and support the dealer that supports the Mountaineers. Not only does Toothman Ford offer the best prices in the state on pre-owned, their never over MSRP campaign on new Fords guaranteed to save you thousands. Drive with pride all season long, knowing you're supporting the dealer that fuels our Mountaineers. Toothman Ford, where cars cost less, in Grafton and at toothmanford.com.
There are better-known tractors in the world than Coyote. Ones with bigger names, longer histories, more popular hats, cute toy lines. But there's not a single tractor ever been built that's better equipped to do the dirty work. So we'll just focus on what really matters. Coyote, we dig dirt.
Now at Johnston Equipment, get 0% financing or a free loader with low-rate financing on select Coyote models in stock. Visit us on Route 33 between Weston and Buchanan.
Back in the gun here as we roll along on episode 236. The Mountaineers rolling along in spring practice. They are back from spring break, and they've got some competition down the final stretch here, Jed. Be about a week and a, well, I should say, about a week and a half until the spring game. As you and I record this now, when this will drop on Wednesday. So a little bit of time left for these guys, not a ton of time left for these guys. And this is the part of the process now, too, where maybe, Rich Rodriguez and company really start to decide who they want to take into the summer, who they want to take into the fall, all those things. And so, there is some ramped up competition and some real, hey, we've got I believe it's 105 spots on this roster, and not everybody who's here is necessarily guaranteed one.
Yeah, this 105 number, they keep calling it the 105. It keeps coming up. So for those who aren't maybe as knee deep in this as we are, let's explain what's happening here. Okay, well, the NCAA has always had a scholarship limit. And that scholarship limit has varied through the years. I mean, back in the Bear Bryant days, it was almost limitless. So Bear Bryant would go out and sign a recruiting class of 150 kids, bench 90% of them just to make sure that they didn't play for Georgia or Auburn and beat him, right? So the NCAA started seeing a lot of that going on. So they said, hey, we got to cap these scholarships, not just on an annual basis, but over the course of 4 years and overall. So they settled on it. They moved the numbers around. I think Coach Wallace was actually on the competition committee when they ended up with the current number of 85. But the number for the last couple decades or more, several years, has been 85 at the FBS level. So you have a scholarship limit of 85. You couldn't have 86 playing football. You could have up to 85. Whether you were West Virginia, whether you were Alabama, USC, didn't matter. Now, there was no limit on in terms of how many you could have on your roster. Now, you might be thinking, are those two different things? Well, yes, they certainly are. When you count walk-ons and everything else, that number can climb easily into the 120s. I think in our case, it might be 125 plus. With some rosters, I think Nebraska's over 140. I'm sure in the SEC, there's some teams with 150 plus, not on scholarship, on their football roster. Now, that means a couple different things. It's not as though you can use 125 kids. For instance, when we travel in the Big 12, you're allowed to travel 70. So it does have its place in the sense that if somebody gets banged up, all of a sudden somebody can start climbing up the depth chart. And even for the third team, you have that kid available to you. So you might be asking, what's this 105 mean? Well, here's what the NCAA is about to do. One of the many changes that's going to take place this year, in addition to rev share and everything else we've talked about. The scholarship limit will no longer be 85. The scholarship limit goes up to 105. So now you're allowed to have, and it's changing with every sport. I mean, we can maybe in the off season at some point talk about the impact on some of the other sports. Like baseball has way more scholarships.
Yeah, which is good.
It's impacting every sport. Okay. Now you might be thinking, well, how's that a bad thing? Okay, well, it's 105 on scholarship, but that's it. It's also 105 on your entire roster. So walk-ons as we know them, to some extent, are in fear of extinction. I mean, a lot of them are going to be forced to transfer down and get opportunities at a lower level. And the FBS schools, the G5 schools, might transfer down to D2. D2 might transfer down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the 105, now why did the NCAA do this? Strangely enough, of all places, it came out of Provo, Utah. It didn't even come out of the SEC. You had a power bar, an energy bar booster in Provo at BYU that struck an NIL deal. BYU at the time had 85 kids on scholarship, and they had 40 or so walk-ons. They had like 125 on the roster. So this booster at BYU comes in and strikes an NIL deal with all 40 walk-ons on the BYU football roster and said, hey, we're in effect going to put you on scholarship with this NIL deal. All you have to do is do this commercial or that billboard, wherever it might be. So then BYU basically had 125 kids on scholarship. Well, the limit's 85. On paper, it's 85, but BYU kind of found a back door to putting way more on scholarship with these NIL deals for their walk-ons. So it's strange that it didn't happen at Auburn or Georgia or LSU or Alabama. It happened at BYU, but it did happen. So the NCAA steps in and says, whoa, okay. That's not the spirit of what we were trying to capture here with this 85 limit. If BYU did it, they're not going to be the only ones to do it. Next thing you know, everybody's going to do it with NIL deals.
Right.
And you're going to have crazy amounts of kids across the country with inflated rosters, basically all on scholarship. And there goes our scholarship limit. So that's why they said we're going to cap it at 105, whether you're Nebraska, whether you're BYU or West Virginia or Alabama or Oregon. You're going to have up to 105, and that's it. You don't have to have the full 105, but of course, most people will push that number. So what that means is West Virginia's sitting here, and if you've heard Rich complain about, man, they really need to look at the possibility of grandfathering some of these kids in. I mean, that's the real drawback to this is you're going to have kids that are doing all the right things, handling their business appropriately. Maybe they're not the most talented kids, or maybe they do have some talent. They're doing everything right. But instead of letting all 125, 127, whatever it might be, stay on the active roster, dress for home games, be on the sideline, and still only travel 70 to Big 12 games, instead of doing that, now you're going to have to cut your way down NFL style to 105, and that's it. So that's going to be a very difficult conversation to have with kids 106 through whatever that are currently on the roster. And Rich was asked today, and it was a pretty interesting answer he gave. Fair, it's just not going to happen. They said, what are you going to tell player number 106? And he says, well, I know I'd like to tell him, hey, why don't you stick around West Virginia and stay and roll just in case somebody gets hurt? You can come out for football again, because that would be legal. That's about the only backdoor possibility you would have to having more than 105 is if somebody on the previous 20 or whatever you had to cut comes back because somebody gets hurt. But nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to sit around and wait. They're going to move on to other opportunities. So it's going to be very NFL-like in the sense that now you might think, well, 105 sounds like a ton of kids. It's really not. I mean, when you start breaking it down, Wes, you work in the NFL, so you know this through and through. For those who don't understand at home, the NFL has an active roster limit of 53. They're allowed to dress, what is it, 48 on game day? Is it
7 or 48? Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and then you're going to have some IR considerations and things like that. Now, in addition,
I think it's 47, Jed, plus you get the emergency third quarterback now to make 48, I believe.
Okay. That would make sense.
I should know this for my job.
So it all starts in the NFL with 90 coming to camp. Now, out of those 90, you have to cut your way down to two things: a 53-man active roster, and they have to have contracts reflecting they are part of the active roster. And then you have a practice squad up to 17 players. Now, those can be guys you had in camp and didn't really want to cut, or those can be guys that you got off somebody else's taxi squad. Because the way the NFL works, you are, matter of fact, it wouldn't be somebody else's taxi squad. Maybe it was somebody else that was cut. Because the way it works in the NFL, if you leave a taxi squad, you're allowed to leave a taxi squad to go to somebody else's active roster, but you can't leave to go to somebody else's taxi squad. Either way, you're looking at 70 players, including the practice squad in the NFL. Now, the truth of the matter is, those aren't the only 70 players that an NFL team will cycle through over the course of a regular season and playoff run. Take the Eagles. If I had to guess, the Eagles probably ended up using to win the Super Bowl over the course of the season somewhere in the mid 70s, the number of players, because you're going to have guys injured. You're going to have certain positions that you didn't anticipate needing more guys at, more depth at. So you're going to have to accommodate that. Sometimes, if you're in a roster that's not in great shape and you hit a rash of injuries and just a stretch of bad luck, you might be pushing 90 guys in the NFL that you cycle through over the course of a long season. So all of a sudden, that 105 number in college doesn't seem quite as robust when you start breaking it down like that. But either way, whether it's sufficient, whether it's not, at the end of the day, it's very much looking, unless some allowance is made and some concessions made by the NCAA, and they allow you to grandfather in the kids that are currently on your roster, which would make sense, which is why I fear they won't do it. You're going to have to cut down to 105. And then you're going to have to say, okay, out of that 105, each team's going to do it a little differently. We're going to have X amount of O linemen, X amount of D linemen and edge rushers, X amount of backers. And one of the things Rich talked about in his press conference today was you're going to have in the coming years, starting with this 2026 class, because he just spent spring break basically doing his deep dive eval into the 2026 prospects that we're recruiting. All of a sudden, guys that can go both ways moving forward, extra value. I mean, Travis Hunter's a unicorn. We're not, deluding ourselves into thinking you're going to find a Travis Hunter, but if you can find somebody who can maybe on some level contribute. And this, you talk about special teams mattering. Well, we always say, and Owen's talked about it how many times, special teams is how so many NFL guys make the roster.
No
doubt. That's going to be now more true than ever at the college level. And now the downside, when you really, really consider how this is going to unfold, not only are you going to have every team in America, every FBS school in the country, every power conference school in America cutting 20, 30, maybe in some cases 40 kids to get down to 105. Guess when that's taking place? A lot of it anyway. Some of it will happen at the end of spring, over the course of the summer, whatever. But a lot of it's going to happen as camp winds down.
Mm-hmm. Right before the season starts.
You talk about you talk about a mad scramble to try and get enrolled elsewhere. That's you're
That's
doing
tough.
no service to those kids. And that's why the NCAA needs to visit this. And that's why I've said before, you're going to have Division two coaches up there with a giant fishing net at every power conference school, trying to bring those kids into the fold, saying, "Hey, we got guys down at the registrar office, guys and gals waiting to get you enrolled right now. Head straight to our school, and we'll get you hooked up. And we might even push the dates a couple of days before, whatever the case is going to be. It's going to
Yeah.
be chaotic. It's never
Yeah.
happened before. You've never seen the market flooded with at any point. I mean, yes, it gets kind of chunky and fattened up when the portal windows open, but this is going to be unlike anything we've seen potentially,
Mm-hmm.
and at a time when these kids don't have many other options. So that's why changes in a perfect world would be made, but I'm not so sure they will be. And what that means moving forward into 2024, because yeah, there will probably be changes in the future where you get from two portal windows down to one. I mean, there's going to be a bunch of changes at some point, but you're going to have to live with this as we know it for 2024. And what it's going to mean is you're going to have to cut your way down to 105. Now, Rich is being incredibly transparent with the kids, with the roster. And why wouldn't you use this as a tool of motivation? Saying, look, I'm going to
Absolutely.
have to cut a bunch of guys I don't want to cut. So, one of the things that's happening over the course of spring ball, and he talked about this today as well, they're going to have more competitive situations. So, they have better tape to evaluate like goal line situations, one on one between DBs and receivers. I mean, those are the types of things they need reps on tape that matter because you're going to be forced into this. Like, if a kid's hurt, how do you evaluate him? Like,
Right.
the NFL has workarounds. Well, that's why you have an injured reserve, and that's why you have stipulations. You're allowed to bring, three guys. Each guy off the taxi squad can come up to the active roster three times without being on an active roster contract. So the NFL's figured it out. And Rich is exactly right. If we're going to lean more and more into a pro model, then we need to make more and more
Yeah.
pro type allowances, concessions, accommodations, because right now it's a square peg in a round hole. I mean, we're still trying to adhere to a lot of these college type rules and regulations with this pro model, and it's just not a good fit. It's going to be not just rough around the edges, but sometimes rough inside the edges. And it's I mean, I'd like to see. I don't know how you work towards it. Bigger brains than me. It's going to take, but some type of can you get some type of practice squad? I really don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if you create the possibility where you can have 5 or 10 Rudies at a school who are in fact willing to say, "Hey, I don't need another opportunity. I love this school so much, and I grew up dreaming of playing here. Uh, I'm going to stick around to be one of those 5 or 10 guys who only practices unless somebody's hurt, and maybe
Yeah.
there is your practice squad." I really don't know the answer,
Yeah.
but it's going to have to be something beyond just this hard and fast 105 multiple portal windows, this and that. It's just a lot of kids are going to be harmed by this.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'm going to touch on that in just a second. I do want to thank our friends at Fortis as well, too, and our buddy Rick Lewis, we all know, for roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed. You got to visit fortis.us.com. And yeah, Jed, that's kind of the weird. Like, in some ways, it's the best time ever to be a college football player right now, right? Like, we've talked about this a little bit with Owen. Imagine what Big O and Pat White and Steve Slayton and Reed Williams and Darius Raynaud and Geno Smith and Tavon Austin, what those guys would have been making in NIL. So in a lot of ways, it is the best time ever to be a college athlete. But in some ways, it's more difficult than ever as well, too, with just, man, every year there's massive changes to the landscape of the sport as well that are very difficult to keep up with and stay on top of.
Big O's got company. Oh, and I truly think when the dust settles,
what
I
was
don't
that,
think
Jed?
D3 and D2. I said I truly think when the dust settles with all this, I don't think much like junior college. We had the case that we all talked about last year. We had the Vandy quarterback challenge the NCAA and win, saying junior college doesn't count towards your eligibility, at least as a one-off. But I think it's going to end up saying D3, D2 probably doesn't count because you didn't have as lucrative opportunities there. So think about it. If the next Owen Schmidt that comes along, if ever there could be such a thing, if you applied the rules as I think they'll end up imminently in the next couple of years, if D3 didn't count towards your eligibility and you had NIL opportunities, first of all, your year in Wisconsin wouldn't have counted. and you're going to have a chance to come back for another year. You telling me right now that after your big run against Oklahoma and you become the runaway beer truck, you're going to have a Budweiser deal nationally, an NIL deal. I mean, seriously, I could see something like that happening with you going with Owen Schmidt actually playing into the 2008 season. That's how different it would have been for you, potentially.
Yeah. Honestly, Jed, the D3, D2 stuff, what is the difference between that and JUCO?
Not much, which is why I think it'll end up the same.
You know what I mean? There isn't really much. So the biggest thing I'm thinking of too is, if you think about the rules back then too, if you transferred up, you had to lose a year of eligibility. So luckily for me, I did play that first year at River Falls. So I burned my next year coming up. And thankfully it wasn't like a red shirt or an actual, playing year that I would have burned. But, I even think too, in the landscape of how things are going now, D2 and D3, you're going to start maybe seeing some guys get picked like talent wise out of those leagues.
Oh yeah.
Big time because, look, those kids don't get paid. Scholarships, maybe, a little bit, but as far as talent goes, you're just talking about the misfit pool, a little too slow, a little too short, not quite big enough or too big. So, I could definitely see more talent coming out of those places versus like what has happened. I said this in a tweet the other day about the rich history of just walk-ons in college football. And, to myself, I'm thinking, maybe they just won't be walk-ons anymore. And maybe they're those guys that they pick from Division II, Division III JUCO guys. And that's more kind of, they just end up blending into that kind of player, I guess, or whatever you want to call them, walk-on / JUCO kid, or whatever.
They're going to be getting some kind of money.
But
yeah.
And then, and then the money thing, you know what I mean? Then the money grab comes in. And, Jed, just like you said, 100%, that guy dubbed me the runaway beer truck. If I have another year eligibility, I mean, we might be drinking Budweisers on the show right now.
For free. Yeah. For free for the rest of your life.
You would have struck up a lifelong partnership. Yeah.
Yeah. Kramer got the
crazy.
cafe latte deal. You'd have a Budweiser deal. Yeah.
Yeah. And, one quick thing, it's kind of off subject here a little bit, but, really two things I want to talk about because I haven't been on the program for a while, and I apologize for that. But was up there for the coaching clinic 2-3 weeks ago, and I said as well, there's Coach Rod's energy just inspires the hell out of me, and to bring it, and I know he's got a new regime and he's trying to implement his culture again there, but to see him that hyped up and that, just getting after it was, it was something that needed to be back there. It's like, I can't really imagine Mountaineer football without him. So that was great to see. And then, one thing I was going to talk about this NIL thing, and I know they'll never switch it, but Coach Rod's approach versus other schools' approaches, I don't know if that'll be adopted or if there's other schools out there that are really kind of doing it. But I know, talking to Sammy Marone, who was Sammy the Bull was a former teammate of mine during those years at West Virginia. He's now in that realm of things. And, to talk about pay for play, I see a tweet by JJ Watt, let's just call it what it is. I mean, this is professional sports now. So either pay based off performance or keep calling it name, image, and likeness and do a workaround deal. But really, what is it and where are we going with it forward? So it's crazy. I'm super stoked for the guys making the cheese. I think my biggest thing ultimately all time for those guys has just been, hey, hopefully they have smart guidance around them and how to invest properly. And, if these kids knew anything about investing, which they don't at 18 years old, but they got someone smarter around them, you invest in a stock like a SCHD, which is a growth dividend stock. And some of these kids are getting 400, 500,000, and this thing over the 10 years is paying, 10 to 14% interest. If these kids looked at that and put that money in there right away, instead of thinking, well, I just want to blow it on a Lambo right away. Now you're talking, let's say $1 million a kid gets paid, puts it in that account. Now he's getting $140,000 a year for the rest of his life. And market's up and down. I get that, but I just hope there's kids getting advice like that. You know what I'm saying? Where they can understand, like, look, man, you really don't have to play anymore. And some of these guys are kind of, one-hit wonders like 90s songs, but just to see where kids are at, hopefully the money goes the right way.
I keep thinking back, Owen, even when I was at Glenville, I'm like, man, if there was NIL when I was at Glenville, see, we had a barber shop down by the Foodland Plaza in Glenville, and you had one barber when you walked in on the right and one on the left, and we called him righty and lefty. And I always thought that, man, if we had NIL, I bet you I could have been getting free haircuts from righty my whole time at Glenville. But
yeah,
because
Lefty
would have told me to go to hell. But righty might have hooked me up with a free haircut for some NIL deal. That's about what I'd have got out of it.
Oh shoot,
buddy!
That's
I would have
fantastic.
straight up hit I would have hit up Mario's Fishbowl, and I would have signed the most lucrative fishbowl deal ever. What's going on here with this thing? Why am I doing that?
Owen would have been eating coasters at the Fishbowl every Monday or every Tuesday night for the masses. Yeah, buy a ticket, come watch Big O eat coasters.
Absolutely, dude.
No, it's a changing world.
It is, and it's not going anywhere. And we're still in they are still building the plane as we fly it, as it relates to all this stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we're going to look up at some point and it will stabilize, but I still think we're a few years away from everything stabilizing. A final thank you to our friends at Johnston Equipment for being a presenting sponsor at ITG. At Johnston Equipment, you could get 0% financing for 72 months, plus a free loader on select Coyote models in stock. You got to visit Johnston Equipment on Route 33 between Weston and Buchanan. Well, gentlemen, I guess the next time we talk next week, it'll be spring. It'll be spring game week, spring showcase week. It's all happening fast.
We won't be here. We will be at Disney.
Nice.
We'll be in vacation. Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, I'm leaving for vacation in a couple hours after this drops. I'll be in Vegas for a few days. Much needed parents getaway for a long weekend with my wife. So we'll all breathe a little bit, and we'll have plenty to talk about here as we kind of come down the home stretch of spring football. But that'll do it for this edition of ITG. Yeah. For our producer Skylar Callahan, the beer truck Big O, and the signal caller Jed Drenning, I am Wes Euler. The one thing we ask of you is to be an ear and tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast. Take care, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. You've been in the gun.
ITG.
The fun doesn't have to stop here.
Be sure to hit subscribe and never miss an episode.
If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback,
be sure to follow us on X at In the Gun Podcast.
Join us again next time.
Until then,
tell an ear to tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast.
This mission is over. It's over.